in the heart of the Eternal Empire, where marble temples rose above the red roofs of Rome, there stood an arena no emperor claimed to own, and no citizen dared to forget. They called it the Colosseum Draconis. Its stones were carved with victories, its sand was blackened by fire, and beneath its golden arches slept the last dragons of the world. Every summer the Senate opened the gates and the city poured in by the thousands. Nobles arrived in silk. Soldiers came with scars. Children sat on their fathers' shoulders, cheering for blood they did not yet understand. But the real power of the arena did not belong to the gladiators. It belonged to the dragon mages, men and women who wore bronze masks, carried staffs of bone and crystal, and bound dragons with forbidden runes burned into scale and soul. Among them, one name was feared above all others: Magister Veyr. He had never lost a match. Not once. He commanded the greatest beast in the arena, Morvath the Cinder King, a black dragon with obsidian scales and a fire so hot it turned lightning white. When Morvath entered the sand, the crowd did not simply cheer. They roared as if death itself had come to entertain them. But in the southern tunnels, behind iron bars and torchlight, a young servant watched in silence. Her name was Aurelia Vale, 17 years old, a slave of the arena. While the crowd celebrated monsters, Aurelia noticed the truth no one else cared to see. Morvath was not obeying. He was suffering. Around his neck, beneath the iron collar, she saw a fresh command rune glowing red against his black scales. The magic was raw, cruel, and unstable. Cassian, the old gladiator beside her, told her pain was simply the language of the place. Aurelia did not answer. She had spent years cleaning cages and feeding beasts that could swallow her whole, and sometimes, when no one was listening, she whispered kind words to the dragons. Sometimes, impossibly, they whispered back. That day the herald called for new challengers from the eastern provinces. The first was a storm drake, blue and electric, lightning snapping between its horns. The second was a sand worm, golden and low to the ground, all teeth and speed. The third made the crowd laugh, a small silver dragon, thin and scarred, one wing bent, barely able to stand. Its young mage looked terrified, but he still stepped into the light. Magister Veyr smiled beneath his bronze mask. He lifted one hand, and the battle began. The storm drake struck first, launching into the sky with a spear of lightning. Morvath did not move. Veyr whispered a word, and Morvath answered with white fire, so bright it looked like a second sun. The lightning was swallowed in flame, and the storm drake crashed to the sand in smoke and ruin. Then the sand worm vanished underground, circling beneath the arena like a blade under cloth. For one long breath, the sand was still. Then the ground exploded upward. The worm clamped onto Morvath's leg, while its rider leapt with twin blades flashing toward his throat. Veyr whispered again. The command rune burned brighter. Morvath screamed, not in rage but in pain. Fire burst from the cracks along his spine as the crowd screamed with delight. Only the silver dragon remained. It trembled in the smoke, too small to be a war beast, and too proud to run. Magister Veyr turned toward the Emperor's balcony and bowed, as if asking permission to end the final challenger. Emperor Lucan, dressed in purple and gold, gave the coldest signal in the world. Thumb down, Veyr raised his hand to kill, and then Aurelia heard it, not with her ears, inside her bones. Morvath's voice, deep and broken and desperate, calling for help. Aurelia stepped back from the bars, stunned. Cassian tried to stop her, but she had already seen the iron hook on the wall. She tore it free, slammed it into the lock, and broke the gate open. The arena seemed to stop breathing. As she ran out into the sunlight, a lone girl in a gray servant tunic, crossing black sand, while dragons and soldiers stared at her. Veyr shouted for Morvath to kill her, The command rune flared. Morvath turned, fire gathering in his jaws. Aurelia stopped only a few steps away and raised both empty hands. She said, the only thing that mattered. "I hear you, you are not his weapon." Morvath froze. The crowd fell silent. Aurelia stepped closer until she stood beneath the shadow of the black dragon. She saw the pattern in the rune around his neck, 3 circles and 7 cuts, a crown made of pain. A fallen curved blade lay in the sand beside her. She picked it up with burned hands and lifted it high. Morvath lowered his head, not to attack, to offer his neck. Aurelia struck once. The collar cracked. She struck again. The runes burst like dying stars. Veyr staggered back as the magic recoiled through his own wrist. Then she struck a 3rd time, and the iron collar shattered completely. For the first time in 20 years, Morvath the Cinder King rose as a free dragon. He threw back his head and roared so hard the arena trembled. It was not the roar of a chained beast. It was the voice of mountains, skies, and memory. The silver dragon crept behind Aurelia. The wounded storm drake lifted its head. Even the sandworm, half buried in ash, opened one golden eye. One by one, every dragon in the arena turned toward Aurelia, Vale and bowed. The crowd did not cheer now. They prayed. Emperor Lucan rose from his balcony. Finally, seeing the truth he had spent years denying, Magister Veyr stood in smoke, with a cracked mask and empty hands, realizing the age of control had ended. Around the arena, soldiers drew their swords, but their lines already looked small. Then the sky above Rome darkened, not with clouds. With wings, dozens of dragons circled over the city, answering a call no human ear could hear. Red, blue, gold, silver, bone white. Their shadows passed over temples, streets, and palace walls. The people of Rome looked up in fear. The emperor looked up in silence. Veyr looked up in fury. Aurelia stood beneath Morvath's wing, her burned hands glowing, with a faint golden mark. She had not become a rider. Something older and more dangerous had chosen her. She was no longer a servant of the arena. She was the beginning of a war. Morvath lowered his great head beside her, and for the first time the beast and the girl looked like the same kind of legend. In the eternal city, the gates were closing, the mages were gathering, and the dragons were waking. The age of chains had ended. The age of fire had begun.